Hi, welcome to another episode of Start the Week with Wisdom. I'm your host, Bridget Burns with the University Innovation Alliance.
And I'm Sara, Custer, Editor-in-Chief at Inside Higher Ed.
Each week, we bring you a short, uplifting interview with a leader in higher education that we think you should be learning from or listening to, who's really steeped in the challenge of navigating the reality of today. So our hope is that this short interview is going to give you some hope, some perspective, and some inspiration. And I think wisdom. Wisdom is what we're going for. That's why we say Week with Wisdom.
Right. And this show, Weekly Wisdom, is sponsored by Mainstay. Higher ed leaders on Weekly Wisdom often discuss the evolving challenges institutions face, and Mainstay's adaptive solutions help address these concerns by enhancing student engagement and retention through proactive, data-driven communication. Learn more at mainstay.com.
The show is also sponsored. It's also broadcast on the Innovating Together podcast network, which is sponsored by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and we are grateful for their continued investment. But now, the main stage. We're really excited to welcome Harrison Keller, who is the president of the University of North Texas. He has a rich, varied background that really spans a variety of perspectives, policy, leadership, innovation. Before this, most immediately, you probably heard about Harrison because he was he was serving as the Commissioner of Higher Education for the state of Texas, where there was a lot of really innovative, forward-thinking data and policy solutions that were coming forward. And people kept pointing to Texas as the one state that was actually moving, and it was under Harrison's leadership. But then before that, I met him when he was at UT Austin. And he was actually originally, way back, one of the first founding liaisons for the University Innovation Alliance. So I'm so excited to bring Harrison on. It's so great to see you now in the presidency and to learn more about how you're taking all that past leadership and applying it to the most difficult job in America today.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget. Thanks, Sara. It's great to see you all.
So I wanted to first start off because we are in a moment where things are challenging and there's a lot of feedback about higher education, and we think that we have a great case to make. I try and start by asking folks about an undergraduate experience that has most positioned them for career success, because I think grounding on the stuff that you did, connected to your undergraduate experience inside, outside the classroom, that you actually use the most, or that set you up well.
Yeah, undergraduate experience. Well, all my undergraduate education, all my graduate education was in philosophy, especially moral and political philosophy. And so that teaches you a lot of due humility, and that teaches you a lot about what you don't know. So I was drawn to that because I was interested in how opportunities ought to be distributed and what it looks like to flourish as a human. And I got a great education in philosophy. I feel like I definitely got a credential of value that I've been able to apply in a lot of different ways as a university president, because now we're asking a lot of these fundamental questions about what the value is of higher education and how that should be distributed, how that should be enhanced, who gets to determine what the value is.
And not just the value of higher education, but the value of philosophy departments specifically. I mean, it's kind of ironic that that's what you studied whenever those departments specifically, but then kind of wider humanities are often the ones that are brought up when people are questioning why people should do a 4-year degree.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Bridget alluded to earlier, when I was Commissioner of Higher Education, one of the things that we did in Texas is we became the first state to condition our goals for attainment on the value of credentials in our economy. So we basically looked into the data and we asked the question, even when you account for opportunity costs and you look at and you net out typical debt payments, that kind of thing, you look at typical earnings, are students better off? And how quickly do they break even on their investment? And so people always ask, well, what about the humanities? If we're asking these questions about earning and value in the economy. And actually, so we looked at that, and now that I'm at University of North Texas, we've done our own version of that, looking at the earnings. And a couple of things. I mean, you find, first of all, the years to break even is longer if you have a degree in philosophy than you have a degree in engineering. But these are indeed credentials of value. Now, I think a lot will depend on sort of what your path is. It's a big difference if you have a philosophy undergraduate degree, you go into law school, for example, versus you just get an undergraduate degree in philosophy and you go on right. So we have to. So that means it should be incumbent on us that we need to look at, like, well, for those students, how do we enhance the value of those credentials? Maybe for some of the students, they ought to fold in an internship or a project management certification or something like that. It just gives you more options in the economy. But honestly, I think if we play our cards right, this should be a time for the humanities to shine, because all the employers are saying they want humanities and liberal arts skills, like they want communications and critical thinking when people can work together.
Whenever I go to those events where there's like a round table and people are talking about ROI and college value, some of the strongest critics that go around the table, I often later will ask them about their major, and they'll have voiced very strong critiques of the liberal arts, but they're a liberal arts major and they actually have been very successful. And so as a former poli-sci major, I'm always just like, I totally checks out to me. Like and people often talk about really rich experiences that happened outside the classroom, but they don't often think of those as part of the package. But it is very much part of the package, right? So anyway, I wanted to ask you, Harrison, you've had a lot of mentors, you've had a lot of opportunities to experience different, advising leaders, being a leader, coordinating leaders, doing all of that. I'm just curious if today, is there any one person or experience that you think most impacted how you think about leadership and how you lead? I'm just trying to understand that.
Well, there are a few people that I'm always going to be indebted to. One of the mentors, one of the former bosses who I was just talking about this just in the last couple of days was when I worked for the Speaker of the Texas House. So I went back and forth between UT Austin and working the policy arena for about 20 years or so. And so I had the opportunity to be the senior education budget and policy advisor for the Speaker of the Texas House. And I worked for the first Republican speaker since Reconstruction. And Texas politics is full contact, right? So this was like a whole nother graduate level education in how a bill really becomes a law. So anyway, we learned a lot of hard lessons and we got a lot done. But one of the lessons that Tom would tell us on his team, would tell fellow legislators, is he'd say, I think people want us to do big things. That's an important part of why they sent us here. But we have to give people something they can be for. And that's really stuck with me, especially now. Like, it's easy enough for people to throw rocks and tear things down or circle the wagons and hunker down and be defensive. But if you're going to lead, you've got to give people something they can be for. And so I think that, especially now when we feel like we're under fire from multiple directions, I think that's an important reminder.
That is an important reminder. I also like that you said Texas politics is full contact. We spoke about this just a little bit before we jumped on here, but I'm very interested in your experience as an intelligence officer. And that kind of ties into my next question was if there are any, I guess, unexpected lessons in your leadership journey that you found that are serving you in your position now.
Yeah, so I was privileged to serve as a Navy Reserve intelligence officer for about 10 years and learned a ton, got to meet some amazing people through that experience. But I did learn a lot that's been helpful to me. So when you're an intelligence officer, right, the focus has to be on actionable intelligence, and that's something that I come back to a lot. Actually, one of the things that I'm working on right now that we proposed to the Texas legislature and they got on board with, we're standing up sort of an intelligence fusion center in the DFW region that's at UNT, but with employers and chambers and economic development corporations, community colleges, technical colleges, other like-minded universities. So the idea is like, how would you put together a center so you could have a regular heartbeat of communication? You're looking at the data, you've got the human intelligence, if you will, coming in from the employers, and trying to distill that into actionable intelligence. Like, it's fine to say, well, we want people who can think critically, but how do we put that in a curriculum, right? How do we inform the kinds of decisions that people need to make within the institutions so it translates into students being able to hit the ground running when they graduate? So I learned a lot about the discipline and the practice and the trust you have to build through that military intelligence side that actually was great training for thinking about how we have to build trust and new kinds of collaborations now, just for something that I'm working on today.
Yeah. I also heard in that when you were talking about actionable intelligence, I was also kind of thinking about data and how institutions use data to inform decisions, and how it seems like, I mean, this is kind of going totally off from intelligence, but it seems like there's just an entire overwhelming amount of data that institutions don't really know what to do with or how to act on that. And it seems like that's such a simple thing to use that to improve student outcomes, but it's not happening for everyone.
This is a really important point, Sara. There are all of these websites where you can get a ton of data, and there's with beautiful animated charts and that kind of thing. But is it really actionable? Like, are you providing like the information that people need in a way they can consume it? That's really hard to do. So I've been part of several projects where we ask people, what kind of data would you like to be able to see? And we put these beautiful dashboards together, and it turned out people didn't use them at all. And that's because it wasn't like folks had 10% more of their time that they were going to spend now looking at the dashboards, right? So you have to figure out, okay, how do I present this intelligence in a way that somebody can action, that somebody can put into their workflows? And again, that's pretty tricky to be able to distill, okay, here are those key data points that you really need to be able to make a good decision about spin this program up or not. Do we put money into reforming this, or do we shut it down? That kind of thing.
I love this. So I'm curious about beyond just data, like there's a lot of stuff happening right now, and I'm curious, I don't know how you use AI, but I always love asking leaders how they're using it, and not asking that question. I'm asking just in general, are there any things that what are you learning right now, or, reading or reflecting on, that might be shifting how you approach your role? Because I feel like there's so much happening. I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you are kind of using right now that you're noticing is shifting your approach to the presidency.
Well, one of the things about AI is just that it's changing so fast, right? I was really excited about this recent announcement from Google that they were going to make, they're going to invest $1 billion over this next 3 years in making more resources available to higher ed institutions around AI, because it is moving so fast. I mean, places like Google are having to change their internal training every 90 days or so. So the typical structures that we have, the typical ways that we think about curriculum, they just don't work. I think there are a lot of these AI programs that folks are rushing out that are probably going to fail because institutions are trying to do these on their own. So I think the only way this is going to work for us to be able to keep up and provide value to the students and be able to stay current is we got to work on this across institutions. We've got to work on it with industry. We've got to share resources. That's a very different way of working than we're used to working within higher ed, and even in places like the UIA, which is pretty unusual that you have that ongoing heartbeat of communication. We have to learn, well, how do you accelerate that work dramatically? Like, how do we move a lot faster to test out different technologies, try to get a sense of what's good for what kinds of students, and that's in our programs. That's how we're operating our institutions as well.
Great.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about your mentors about them saying that you've got to give somebody a why, not just kind of like a what and how we're going to do this, but like an actual why to fight rather than just breaking things down. And I'm curious to know what your why is, and if there's an activity or maybe a way that you get back to that purpose in this job that is kind of coming at you, all things everywhere all at once.
Yeah, the everywhere all at once is exactly how it feels right now. So I was telling folks the other day, like, remember a couple of years ago when we were talking about the headwinds from the demographic cliff and declining confidence in higher ed? And I get a little nostalgic for those headwinds right now.
They're just breezes, warm breezes at that point.
Now it feels like West Texas hailstorm, like coming from all directions at the same time. And so anyway, I was thinking about this. Actually, it made me think about my grandfather. So my grandfather was a cotton farmer in West Texas, and he would take me out to the cotton farms. And I don't know if you've been in that part of the country, but you'd see the rows of cotton that just like seem like they go on forever and they converge at the horizon. And so now they use GPS to plow the furrows straight. But how they used to do it is you pick a reference point and you focus on that reference point on the other side of the field. And then as you're driving the tractor, you'd make small adjustments along the way and you don't look back. And so I was thinking about that. I was reflecting on that. And I think, again, I think that's really good advice when you've got things coming at you from all directions and it feels like you're under fire. For me right now, I would say that reference point has to be a commitment to deliver value. And I mean, deliver value for students, for our employers, for communities, for the state, for our republic. We have to have a commitment to deliver value. And the value proposition isn't something that we get to stipulate by ourselves within higher education. We have to be in dialogue with employers about what they need. We have to be reflective about, well, what does it mean to educate citizens who are going to be able to go out and think critically and contribute, make a difference in this time. So again, like for me, that North Star has to be this commitment to deliver value.
That's great. I'm curious if there's anyone. So when I often talk to folks about that, I always push a little further on. Is there a type of activity that you need when you need to get grounded, can go back to that's on campus? And for me, I always hear it's if I can get into a classroom, if I can just go talk to a student, obviously graduation day is like the perfect day, but we don't get to have the perfect day all the time, right? But I'm just, if there's a thing that for you is like the touchstone that's on the campus.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I really wanted to get back to a campus for, there's just an energy to a campus because of the students and the faculty, and I love spending time with the students. So one of the things I did this first year as president is I set up a student advisory committee and told them if they get together with me regularly, that I would provide lunch. And so we get together for off the record conversation, and it's been really amazing to get to know sort of cross section of different students. The other place I love to spend time with students. So I was pretty serious about music earlier in my life. And so it turns out now I get to be president of the University of North Texas that has one of the best music schools in the world. And so I asked my assistant to make sure I've got some joy on my calendar each week. So there would be a recital or a rehearsal or go over to the marching band practice or drop in and hear the 1 o'clock lab band practice, and that's joy. That gets me grounded. That gets me ready to go again.
I love that, and I don't think I've ever seen or heard anyone say that. The most college, the assistant to the president, the most powerful person that exists on campus, right? And so, but knowing that that you gave such a broad category of direction, and that was really smart.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to have joy, right? You've got to make sure that you've got joy to keep you going and keep you balanced.
And you got to schedule it in. Otherwise, I mean, that's often the first thing that goes whenever your calendar is totally booked up. So good that you've been intentional about it. I'm also very curious. Did you play an instrument? Were you in a band?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I spent so much time playing in bands and orchestras and the folk choir, and there's all kinds of stories that I could tell you. So I was I did percussion, and I was also a drum major. So I did a lot of marching band and stuff. So in middle school, high school, and college, I did a lot of drum majoring. So I learned a lot about leadership out on the marching band field, because that's when the stakes are really high. Like there are no do-overs there at the halftime show.
Yeah. UNT is a perfect place for you. I'm curious to know, just switching gears a little bit, what are you most proud of as a leader?
Most proud of for this year? I'm really proud of, again, we talked about earlier all of the friction and all of the things that, there's all these challenges, and on top of that, we were in the legislative session, and so as one famous Texan said, no Texan is safe in their beds when the Texas legislature is in session, right? So you can never worry enough for all of these things that are swirling around. I am really proud of how much we were able to get done at UNT this year. So on budgeting, on student success, on advancing our research productivity, folks really came together, and we were able to move incredibly fast to make a ton of changes at the university. That was one of the things I didn't know when I came to UNT. Here, I've got all these ideas about higher education and what I think universities should be doing, but how would that be received? And would natural antibodies well up from the students and the faculty and the deans and that kind of thing? That has not been the case at all. It's really been terrific. Folks are pretty game, and it's really kind of a culture of you can do what you're big enough to do. And so I'm really proud of how far we've been able to come just over this last year.
Yeah.
Great. Two quick questions. One, I'm curious if there's advice that you most consistently receive that you can share with others, and if there's a book that you most consistently recommend as well.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So advice that I've received that's been really, really useful. So let me think. I would say the advice has been, I'm a big fan of the Michael Watkins First 90 Days stuff. I've used that a lot when I transition into different leadership opportunities. And one of the things it really emphasizes is about accelerating your learning. And so when I got to campus, I really tried to lean into that, especially in those early days, to try to accelerate my own learning of the campus. And that's really paid off, to spend time sitting with different VPs and deans and student leaders, and to take that time to really listen hard, and then periodically keep coming back and checking as we're working through things. That's, for me, has helped me make better decisions. It's helped me go faster. And on the books, the book this year that hit just right at the right time was David Yeager's 10 to 25 book. And so he did a fantastic job of distilling the work on mindset, and also at bringing in some new contributions about sort of what that should look like for coaching and mentoring. So we actually had David come to campus and do like a book talk. And I've referred to that many times, that we want to be a culture where we have very high standards. You don't want to water down those standards. You want to have, I always tell the students, we should have high standards that are worthy of your talents. But and then you've got to couple that with high support. So you make sure that people are going to be able to meet those standards, to be able to take their talent as far as they want to take it. And there's a lot of great guidance that's in that 10 to 25 book we've taken inspiration from.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been really lovely to be able to elevate you as a leader and see your journey. And so thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Bridget. Thanks, Sara. I really enjoyed and appreciated the conversation.
Thanks, Harrison.
All right. See y'all.